it's best to have this kind of awareness. But there's no need to sacrifice in vain. My abilities are more defensive, and my personality is the same. So during combat, I will do my best to protect everyone's lives. The time of the operation is unknown, and the plan of action will need to be decided based on the occasion of the eclipse moon. In this regard, Vice Captain Bai Li is an expert. Zhang Yi looked at Bai Li Changqing. There was no dispute about him serving as vice captain. Both his strength and popularity convinced everyone. Zhang Yi said to Bai Li Changqing, "In the time to come, I hope you can strengthen the training of the team members. There can be no room for slacking." Bai Li Changqing crossed his arms and responded loudly, "Yes, Captain." In fact, over the past few months, their team's training had never let up. Even if the higher-ups looked down on their team of dissatisfied recruits, they would not give up on themselves. They were just waiting for this day, a chance to go into battle. Zhang Yi walked up to Bai Li Changqing and whispered in his ear, "As for the three of us, you'll have to give us some private lessons." Zhang Yi gave Bai Li Changqing a wink. It was a bit strange to say something like that in public, and as captain, his basic combat skills were definitely not as good as those of the members of the Black Robe Squad. Yang Xinxin and Liang Yu were also lacking in this area. Having Bai Li Changqing give them special training would definitely be beneficial. Bai Li Changqing paused for a moment, then smiled and replied, "Yes, as you wish." He rubbed his hands together. However, the training for the three of you cannot be done together with the rest of the team. There will be a big difference in the training methods and intensity. Will this affect the subsequent battle? If the training doesn't go well, the subsequent teamwork will definitely not be as tacit. Zhang Yi, however, remained calm. This is not a big deal. Just help us train well. He doesn't expect them to have the combat literacy of professional soldiers in a short period of time. Any improvement is some improvement. "Oh, by the way, there's one more thing I need your help with." Zhang Yi whispered a sentence in Bai Li Changqing's ear. Bai Li Changqing was a little surprised. He looked deeply at Liang Yu and nodded slowly. Then he said to the others, "You guys go ahead and do your daily training. The captain and I have something we need to take care of." Wu Di and the others had no idea what they were up to. But now Zhang Yi and Bai Li Changqing were the captain and vice captain, and they naturally had to obey what they were told. The few of them could only resist their curiosity as they watched Zhang Yi and Bai Li Changqing lead Yang Xinxin and Liang Yu away. Zhang Yi and the others arrived at the martial arts field. Zhang Yi looked at Bai Li Changqing and said with a smile, "You've had a hard day." Bai Li Changqing glanced at Liang Yu and shrugged with a smile. "It's okay, we'll all be teammates from now on, and we should always help each other." Zhang Yi nodded, then, "Let's experiment." He led Yang Xinxin away from the martial arts field. It was quickly sealed off. As captain of the investigation squad, Zhang Yi now had the authority to request the opening of the martial arts field. The martial arts field quickly became a huge area with a radius of 5 kilometers. Bai Li Changqing and Liang Yu were the protagonists of this martial arts event. Yes, Zhang Yi wanted Liang Yu to fight Bai Li Changqing to determine her current level of strength. Of course, because it was an experiment, Zhang Yi would not let them really fight to the death. Even the weapons used were blunt weapons that had not been sharpened. Liang Yu held a blunt sword in her hand, her eyes tightly shut. The moment she opened them, an astonishing aura spread out from her, taking over the entire field. Bai Li Changqing's weapon was an alloy long stick, which he swept with one hand, also with an astonishing aura. The battle between the two began. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin watched very carefully from above. The battle below belonged to the top-level enhanced mutants. Enhancement-type mutants are the most common type of mutant. Their enhancements are mainly flesh and blood-based, which can enhance their overall attributes. Most of them do not have abilities other than close combat. But it would be a big mistake to underestimate them because of this. Because theoretically speaking, enhancement-type mutants are one of the few beings that can kill people multiple levels above them. Even if it is only a level 2 beta-class enhancement mutant, once it gains the opportunity to get close, it can use its powerful close combat abilities to kill a level 4 Delta class expert. Add to this their terrifying vitality and self-healing abilities, and enhancement mutants have become a presence that no one dares to underestimate. And after undergoing the transformation, Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing can be considered the current leaders in this field. Watching them fight was like watching two ancient monsters from the ancient era fighting, which was terrifying. Just as Zhang Yi was intently observing, information from the martial arts field suddenly came through his device. Zhang Yi, out of curiosity, chose to receive it, and a blue screen appeared in front of him, displaying analysis of the data of the two combatants. A look of surprise flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. He had been to the martial arts field once before, but that time he had been a participant. However, he had thought that the martial arts field could analyze the abilities of mutants. In fact, he was right. Yang Xinxin also curiously poked her head over to look at the data analysis of Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing. There were the two people's headshots, along with detailed analyses of their various abilities. Liang Yu, Enhancement Ability User. Weapon, Long Sword. Speed, A1 Strength, A1 Skill, S1 Supernatural Ability Index, 6,800 points. Bai Li Changqing, Enhancement Ability User. Weapon, Long Stick Speed, A1 Strength, A2 Skill, A2 Supernatural Ability Index, 7,200 points. The above are the basic data, and there is a lot of complex analysis data that is not enough to go into detail. Zhang Yi was a little surprised. No wonder the regional headquarters can evaluate the level of mutants, they have such detailed data analysis. What the hell is an ability index? Zhang Yi asked the intelligence system in the martial arts field. The martial arts field quickly gave Zhang Yi an answer. It's similar to the combat power index. However, due to the wide variety of supernatural abilities, in addition to combat-type mutants, there are also support-type, utility-type, and many other supernatural abilities. Therefore, a comprehensive score is given based on the practicality of the ability. In other words, the ability index is not exactly equivalent to the combat power index. Take Shokir, for example. Her ability is healing, and even if her ability index reaches 10,000, she is not as good of a fighter as a mutant with an ability index of 1,000. But for mutants of the same fighting type, this ability index is close to combat effectiveness. However, it cannot be completely equated with combat effectiveness, because the restraint relationship between abilities also needs to be considered. Zhang Yi felt a little itchy inside, and he couldn't help but ask, so what is my ability index? The martial arts field quickly gave Zhang Yi the data. 5,200, Zhang Yi's eyebrows shot up. Is my ability index really that low? But he soon understood. The data the martial arts field had calculated was from the previous battle between him and Wu Di. In fact, he had not revealed his true strength in front of Blizzard City. So this ability index was not of much reference value to him. The two monsters below continued to fight, the battle wind rising up to the sky, emitting terrifying cries. Zhang Yi's inquisitive mind struck up a conversation with the martial arts field's intelligence system. He asked them about the classification of the ability index. The intelligence system gave Zhang Yi the following response: Level 1 Alpha, Ability Index 1 to 9, Level 2 Beta, 10 to 99, Level 3 Gamma, 100 to 999, Level 4 Delta, 1000 to 9999, Level 5 Epsilon, 10,000 to Unknown. These are the current levels of supernatural ability that have been confirmed to exist in humans, and the ability index classification for them. In other words, Liang Yu and Bai Li Changqing are both currently at a high level for combat power rating. Bai Li Changqing and Liang Yu fought for a long time and neither could be declared the victor. Although both had held back and there had been no real death match, the result did show one thing: Liang Yu's potential had been greatly developed. Nowadays, she had the strength of a vice captain. The two of them very tacitly called it a day and returned to the bleachers. Bai Li Changqing took the initiative to praise Zhang Yi, saying, "I never imagined that you had such a hidden expert by your side." Her strength amazes me. If I hadn't received regional training in the past, I wouldn't have been her match in a one-on-one fight. Bai Li Changqing wasn't being modest. Liang Yu wasn't practicing martial arts for show, she was practicing real killing techniques. None of the people who could serve as bodyguards in that place were weaklings. If it came down to life and death, he wasn't sure he could defeat Liang Yu. He just had the advantage of having been trained longer by the Jiangnan region. As for Liang Yu, before she received help from the Deng family's technology, most of the time she was considered to be growing in a barbaric way. Zhang Yi nodded and looked at Liang Yu, unable to hold back the smile in his eyes. Finally, he had a combatant by his side that he could show off. By the way, do you know anything about the ability index system? Zhang Yi looked at Bai Li Changqing. Bai Li Changqing smiled and said, of course. This is a large region that uses an artificial intelligence system to evaluate the ability levels of mutants. The division of supernatural ability levels such as alpha, beta, etc., actually have clear boundaries. For example, the boundary between delta and gamma is whether or not they can master the power of mutual devouring. And the boundary between delta and epsilon is the power level of their abilities, whether or not they have reached a quantum leap. The most basic way to judge epsilon is whether it has the power to destroy a city by itself. Of course, for some mutants, their ability index will be described using indicators that apply to other mutants. Bai Li Changqing held up a finger, however, this simple classification is too general. It cannot reflect the true abilities of mutants. There are still huge differences in level between each major classification. So many years ago, experts in the field of mutant research proposed the concept of an ability index. That is the current standard for ability indexes. Zhang Yi nodded, this does indeed provide a more intuitive way of measuring the ability level of mutants. Bai Li Changqing asked, Captain, do you know your own ability index? I don't, Zhang Yi said directly. Bai Li Changqing laughed and said, the latest update to your ability index was after you completed the elimination of the 4 members of Eclipse Moon. The intelligence system has set your ability index at 8,200 points based on your combat record and abilities. 8,200 points, which is 1,000 points higher than Bai Li Changqing's. Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow and asked curiously, may I ask what the ability indexes of Bian Zhenwu and Deng Shintong are? Bai Li Changqing answered truthfully, Captain Bian had 9,100 points, while Deng Shintong had 9,300 points. Zhang Yi couldn't help but laugh even harder. Bai Li Changqing thought Zhang Yi was upset that he had been underestimated. He hurriedly explained, this is only a numerical judgment, and cannot be absolutely linked to combat effectiveness. After all, there are too many factors that determine victory or defeat on the battlefield. Zhang Yi shook his head. Bai Li Changqing didn't understand what he meant. He wasn't angry, but happy. Yes, happy. Even though he had become the captain of the investigation team, in the eyes of most people in Blizzard City, his strength was still between the levels of vice captain and captain. In other words, none of them really understood Zhang Yi's strength. Isn't that a wonderful thing? He still had hidden cards that no one knew about. Later, after Bai Li Changqing had left, Zhang Yi asked Liang Yu about it. If you fought him, would you be confident in winning? Because of the judgment given by the martial arts field's intelligence system, Liang Yu's ability index was lower than Bai Li Changqing's. Liang Yu did not answer the question directly. She just glanced at the unsharpened training sword in her hands and said lightly, the sword doesn't feel right in my hands. Time passed, and Zhang Yi formulated a training plan for the Tengu squad. The members of the former Black Robe squad trained as usual, as their daily training load had not been reduced. The focus was on training Zhang Yi, Liang Yu, and Yang Xinxin by Bai Li Changqing, a former lieutenant colonel of the Yan Yunwei and Special Forces instructor. Zhang Yi and the others had to learn the cooperation that is really required in the battlefield, including basic squad tactics. Professional soldiers are definitely better at this than these amateurs. The next day, Yi He and the others, who had recovered after treatment, found Zhang Yi. They had already seen Zhang Yi's strength and were completely convinced. Yi took the lead, and the three of them bowed 90 degrees to Zhang Yi. "Captain, please forgive our rudeness. We hope to join the operation to surround and attack Eclipse Moon and avenge Captain Deng and the teammates in the Heavenly God Squad." Zhang Yi looked at the three in front of him and didn't say a word. The three bowed 90 degrees and maintained that position for a full 10 minutes. Even for trained soldiers, the psychological pressure was somewhat heavy. Just as they were about to hold on no more, Zhang Yi's voice came cold and indifferent from above. "Are you satisfied with my punishment? A major demerit and a public review of their mistakes." This punishment was a bit too heavy for just being late once. But the three of them were no longer young, and they understood that Zhang Yi was establishing his authority over them. And now if they wanted to return, they would have to look Zhang Yi in the eye. Yi quickly replied, "We are satisfied." He quickly pulled out the review from his body. It was a very long, handwritten letter of self-reflection, running to more than 10 pages. "This is my self-reflection." Zhang Yi didn't even bother to read it. "Members of the Tengu squad are willing to risk their lives and fight for the honor of the country. Therefore, there is a high probability that you will die. If it is for the sake of victory, I will not hesitate to sacrifice your lives. Even so, do you still want to join? Some things need to be made clear in advance. Otherwise, when the time comes for them to go and die, it will leave people with something to say." The three of them said in unison, "As long as we can destroy Eclipse Moon, we are willing to sacrifice our lives." For these soldiers who had long been at war, death was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was not having the opportunity to wash away the shame on their bodies and living with remorse for the rest of their lives. The defeat of the Heavenly God Squad had made the name they had once been proud of a big joke. The glory that had been attached to them in the past suddenly dimmed, and they could even often hear others talking about the Heavenly God Squad's defeat to Eclipse Moon. It was even more humiliating than the defeat of the number 1 seed in the competition zone. The team with the highest chance of winning the World Championship lost to a team that had advanced from the qualifying round of the 3rd division. So they stayed up all night, unable to sleep, longing to go and fight the Eclipse Moon team right away. Even if they died on the battlefield, it would be more comfortable for them than living as cowards. In the end, Zhang Yi chose to let the three men publicly recite their letters and then admit them into the team. Zhang Yi told the three of them, "Okay, now get back in line and keep training." The three responded, "Yes, Captain." After all, these three men are also quite good fighters, and they will definitely be useful in the fight against Eclipse Moon. Anyway, even if they have reservations about Zhang Yi in their hearts, they will not dare to disobey in the battlefield. Because of this, Zhang Yi can justifiably kill them. In the time that followed, training became their main task.